It is the third model introduced in the 2025 Godzilla collaboration, featuring the likeness of the iconic insectoid kaiju itself, GZL02 Seraph Moth. With a kit of Emit shot, Zettai guard, replay shot, flight legs, and the leg ability of Barrage, which grants the anti-jammer effect to self when charging Metaforce. Now, what's Godzilla without Mothra to join the fray, and if not fight alongside, simply even make an appearance in the iconic Kaiju series? It most certainly is synonymous with the name of Kaiju alongside the Big G Godzilla himself, and it certainly would not be a Godzilla collaboration without Mothra making an appearance. And while Mothra does not feature any brand new skills as, say, Godzilla Ragna does, it still is a very powerful and rather potent kit in the right hands if used correctly. Emit shot on the head part is a shooting attribute skill that has a certain number of conditional bonuses, but if done correctly can make it an extremely powerful shooting attack if meeting the right conditions. Those conditions are, it requires 30 CG in your gauge to use just to even be choosable and even an option while in battle. If you do not have 30 CG, well, you're not using Emit shot until you do. However, at the cost of being very CG expensive, it does also mean that Emit shot gets a double damage and a piercing bonus on top of that, as long as it's able to consume the CG upon attacking. And with a base power of almost 2000 by itself, that means it's going to be an extremely powerful attack all under the right circumstances, if not a very easily enemy crippling type of attack. Zettai guard on the right arm is a defense attribute skill that basically is every shield in the game combined with a very unique bonus. Simply explained, it negates all negative ailments no matter what they are, and it negates all damage conditions. This means times 1.5 bonuses, CG bonuses, conditional bonuses, defense ignore, anything else of the like that is not regular base damage is negated and removed when intercepted by Zettai guard, or translated simply, absolute guard. And this also does mean, however, that as a basic type guard with this kind of special condition, it does mean that it's going to be tying very heavily on the reliance of the user's leg resistances, so melee and shoot resist, for how well it's going to reduce that base damage. But when you're reducing basically all damage down to more or less the equivalent of its 4-star unraised damage bonus and output, it's gonna be pretty easy to stack up on that all the same. And with it being non-heavy means that it really features no drawback or penalty when using this back and forth across the line. The only real weakness is that given that it is a non-meta change type shield, it does mean that anyone with Destroy or something similar can effectively remove Zettai guard from the equation after the first couple charges. Replay shot on the left arm is a shooting skill that also kind of falls in the negative ailment category, but when attacking the target and successfully landing the attack, it does inflict the enemy with an encore state. This encore state, while active, means that the last used skill or turn that the enemy had used or will be using will be repeated for the next 3 turns straight or until attacked. So that means if you manage to catch the enemy just right, such as say when charging Metaforce or using a really weak attack, or if you break something just before they have the chance to use it, you essentially give yourself some extra turns to kind of breathe a little easier. But this also does rely on the other side, so if you manage to catch them after they use something really powerful, such as say in Seraph Moth's case, they emit shot, that does mean that if it does have the charge to use, or if it's able to use the attack, you're going to be eating another up to 3 emit shots unless you manage to attack them and snap them out of it. Flight legs means that Seraph Moth will have very solid coverage across all terrains. I'd say not necessarily as well-rounded as Biped are, but trading a pretty fair bulk and speed, typically with higher evade and mobility. But given that it's a collab model, those conditions kind of go out the window. With a base mobility of 1026 and a evade of 1046, this is kind of par for the course as far as flight legs are concerned, focusing very heavily on high speed and high evade. To guarantee that attacks are going to land, you're going to be making it really, really hard for them to do so. But with a melee resist of 1402 and a shoot resist of 1441, fairly well-rounded damage reduction stats at that, it does mean that Seraph Moth is going to have some pretty solid times being able to, if not dodge or graze, reduce incoming damage both from up close and at range without anything really breaking it too quickly. And with the leg ability of Barrage basically covering its own weakness, it does mean that once that effect of Anti-Jammer is active, for the next 2 hits from Anti-Air, it basically negates its own weakness, so giving it some very solid coverage in that category as well. As far as the parts are concerned as well, it is packing some very solid numbers as well, with a head armor of just shy of 3,800, right arm at almost 4,100, left arm at just over 3,400, and legs at almost 3,600. So this Moth type is rather bulky and deceptively bulky as well, but given it has Zettai Guard in its arsenal, this is kind of par for the course and to be expected. However, with very impressive heat and cool stats as well, with low mid 800s for the emit shot, low to high 700s for Zettai Guard, and even just some mid-range 500 to low 600s for replay shot, speed is most certainly not going to be a problem when it comes to Seraph Moth. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I do have to rate Seraph Moth a pretty middle-of-the-road 6 out of 10. Given that it can most certainly cover its own weakness with Barrage, and Zettai Guard makes it a very solid and bulky damage reducer and defender on the team, its skills are kind of scattered, if I'm being honest with you. Emit shot being rather very heavily reliant on you having the CG in your gauge to use, and replay shot basically being kind of a gamble based on when you actually manage to catch your target and what they use when you inflict the encore state. It can be kind of an up in the air based on how you choose to use them. And realistically, you'd be focusing more on using Zettai Guard as often as you can until it breaks, then you'd probably be focusing on Emit shot or replay shot as necessary. As mixed parts though, I do have to rate Seraph Moth notably higher at an 8 out of 10. Given that while all 4 parts are actually very, very useful in their own states, Pure Set is kind of a really scattered kit that makes it tricky to use. But Flight Legs with very high speed over 1,000 with Barrage to cover its own anti-air weakness, Emit shot for very solid CG-reliant shooting if necessary, Zettai Guard for that perfect defense to basically everything but basic damage, and replay shot for that encore status means you have still a very mixed range of parts that you can choose from or use in any kind of role you're looking for.